Now, who is involved in creating an IEP?
Okay. It is always the special education teacher that is working, I say working the file, but the person that is in charge of setting the meetings and so forth. It could be a speech pathologist in that case, or it could be a special education teacher, and then the classroom teacher always has to be at the conference, and then the parent always has to be at the conference. If the principal is usually invited as well, but sometimes the classroom or the special education teacher is the designee.
Okay. About how long does it take to create an IEP?
Okay, just for me to type one up, or?
Like on average, how many meetings?
Oh, okay, I got you. Okay. Well, we have a referral. Let's say a teacher, we've decided that a student needs to be referred for special education. We have 1 week to get that meeting notice out. And that meeting notice, the parent has to be given a 2-week, their first meeting notice has to be sent out 2 weeks prior to the date that has been appointed. So you have to give them a 2 weeks notice, in other words. And then once that parent comes in and we have the meeting, if we decide that we are going to test and the parent gives us written consent, then we have 60 days to collect all the test data. And then after that 60 days, we have 30 days to receive those reports and come back together. So there's a time window of 90 days, actually, after you get the consent from the parent.
Okay, so you've pretty much answered this, but how much involvement does the parent have?
The parents' participation in the committee is very important. We do not test a student ever without consent from the parent, and we cannot place that student without their consent. But also, the parent has so much information as far as environment, what's going on at home, what kind of effort have they been putting forth at home, and it could be that there's medical background, so the parent provides social history and birth history and developmental history. All those things are important, and they will be included in the reports.
Okay. So who actually implements the IEP? Does it depend on the student whether he or she stays in the general classroom or is pulled?
Okay. Typically, from the way I have my classroom set up here at Darnell Primary, there's all different ways that an IEP can be implemented, but students come to me for the areas that they qualify in, such as reading, written expression, or math. So I have a scheduled time, and then they come to my classroom daily and for a certain amount of time, and then that's the amount of time that they're served. So we usually serve students per minutes per week. But IEPs can be written in different ways. Like if they're more than 60% of the school day, they might be considered as a self-contained student. They might be in the special education classroom more than just pull out. Or, I do have some students that are called indirect. And so I just check on these students. The teachers also communicate with me. They have an IEP, but they're not directly pulled unless they just need help occasionally.
Okay.
Or I can provide some supports for that child in the classroom. So did I answer your question? Let's think. What was your question?
Yes, you
Okay.
did. Now, can the IEP change or
Yes.
modified, or does a new one have to be created completely?
Yes, I want to go back to this question because the IEP is implemented actually usually by the classroom teacher, because I kind of skipped over that. Now there is a piece of the IEP which is the modifications, and that is signed off by the teacher, and the teacher also has to implement those in the classroom.
Okay.
And those are modifications that are agreed upon by the IEP committee that will take place in the whole school setting, not just in the special education classroom.
Okay.
Like it might be specialized seating or the teacher may need to read the test to the student, or so, it's
Okay.
going to be modifications to help them be more successful in the classroom. So that part of the IEP is implemented by the classroom teacher and the
Okay.
activities teacher. Okay, sorry.
Oh no. And so can the IEP change, or can it be modified, or do the team have to create a completely new one?
Okay, that's a great question. For instance, let's say a team has created an IEP, and that student has breezed through the goals and objectives, and more goals and objectives need to be added because the year's not up and they still need something to work toward. Those goals and objectives can be added to the IEP. I would usually give my parent a call and say, hey, your child has worked all the way through, let's add some more goals. Or I might even just update what I have. I might up the percentage, but I always communicate with the parent. Now that's a minor change because we're adding to it, but if there's any other, I would always call a meeting to have the parent come in. For instance, if we're going to reduce time or increase minutes, if we need to change a modification or something, I would usually ask the parent to come in and let's talk about it.
Okay. And is there any other information that you think I should know about an IEP?
The IEP is confidential, so when I give a portion, I